Did you hear what I was playing, Lane?
I don't think it's very polite to listen, sir.
Sorry for that, for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep science for life.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and speaking of the sciences of life, have you got those cucumber sandwiches cut for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
Oh, there you go. Lane, by the way, I see that from your book that last Thursday when Lord Shorman and Mr. Worthing were dining with me, 8 bottles of champagne are to have been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Now, why is it that at a bachelor's establishment, the servants invariably drink the wine? I merely ask for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often observed that in married households, the champagne is rarely a first-rate brand.
Good heavens! Is marriage so demoralizing as that?
I believe it is a very pleasant state, sir. I've had very little experience with myself at present. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
Well, I don't know that I'm much interested in your family life, Ryan.
No, sir, it's not a very interesting subject. I never think of it myself.
Very natural, I'm sure. Thank you, Lane. That will do.
Thank you, sir.
Lane's views on marriage seem somewhat lax. Really, if the lower orders don't set us a good example, what on earth is the use of them? They seem, as a class, to have absolutely no sense of moral responsibility.
Mr. Earnest Worthing.
How are you, my dear Earnest? What brings you up to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Algy.
I believe it is customary in fine society to have taken some slight refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since last Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And, who are the people you amuse?
Oh, neighbours.
Oh,
Eh?
nice neighbours in your part of Shropshire?
No, never speak to one of them.
How immensely you must amuse them.
Yes, of course. Why? Hello, why all these cups? Why the cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea, Algy?
Oh, merely Aunt Augusta. And Gwendolen.
Oh, how perfectly delightful.
Yes, that is all very well, but I'm afraid Aunt Augusta won't approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear fellow, the way you flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly disgraceful. It's almost as bad as the way Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you'd come up for pleasure. All that business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic in proposing. It is very romantic to be in love, but there's nothing romantic in a definite proposal. Why, one may be accepted. One usually is, I believe. And the excitement is all over. And the very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever get married, I'll certainly try to forget that fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specifically invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on that subject. Divorces are made in heaven. Oh, please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They're ordered specially for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all the time.
That's a very different matter. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is, too.
Dear fellow, you need not eat it all. You act as if you're already married to her. You are not already married to her. And, as a matter of fact, I don't think you ever will be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Sorry. Well, in the first place, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it's right.
Oh, that is nonsense.
It isn't. It's a great truth. It counts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees all over the place. In the second place, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
My dear fellow, Gwendolen is my first cousin, and before I allow you to marry her, you must clear up the whole question of Cecily.
Cecily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Cecily? I don't know anyone of the name of Cecily.
Elaine, bring me that cigarette case Mr. Worthing left in the smoking room last time he dined here.
Yes, sir. Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case the entire time? I wish to goodness you'd let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. It's very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I wish you would offer one. I happen to be particularly hard up.
There's no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that is rather mean of you, Ernest, I must say. However, now that I open it up and look inside, I find that it isn't yours after all.
Of course it is mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right to read what is written inside. It is a very ungentlemanly thing to read what is written in a private cigarette case.
Oh, it's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should and what one shouldn't read. More than half of modern culture depends on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone with the name of Cecily. You said you didn't know anyone with that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cecily happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
My aunt. Charming old lady she is too. Lives in Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
But why does she call herself Little Cecily? She is your aunt from Tunbridge Wells. From Little Cecily with her fondest love.
My dear fellow, what is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may decide for herself. You seem to think like every aunt should be like yours. That is absurd. Just give it back to me, Algy.
But yes. But why does your aunt call you her uncle? From Little Cecily, with her fondest love to dear Uncle Jack. There is no objection, I admit, to an aunt being a small aunt. But why an aunt, no matter what her size may be, call her own nephew her uncle? I can't make it out. Besides, your name isn't Jack, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest, it's Jack.
You've always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking person I've ever saw in my life. It's on your cards. Here's one of them. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany. I'll keep this as proof as your name is Ernest if you ever attempt to deny it to me, or to Gwendolyn, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town, and Jack in the country, and the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but it does not account for the small fact that your Aunt Cecily, who lives in Tunbridge Wells, calls you her dear uncle. Come on, boy, you best have the whole thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's a very vulgar thing to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
Which is exactly what dentists do. Now, go on, tell me the whole thing. I may mention that I've always suspected you as a confirmed and secret Bunburyist. And I'm quite sure of it now.
Bunburyist? What on earth do you mean by Bunburyist?
I'll reveal to you the meaning of that incomparable expression as soon as you are kind enough to inform me why you're Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now, produce your explanation and pray. Make it improbable.
My dear friend, there was nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it's perfectly ordinary. My grandfather, who adopted me, old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cecily Cardew. Cecily, who addresses me as her aunt, from motives of respect that you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country, under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prism.
Where is that place in the country, by the way?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. And I might tell you candidly, it's not in Shropshire.
I suspected that, my dear fellow. I have Bunburied all over Shropshire on 2 separate occasions. Now, go on. Why are you Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you'll be able to appreciate my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one must adopt a high moral tone on all subjects. It is one's duty to do so. And as a high moral tone cannot be said to conduce very much to either one's health or happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Earnest, who lives in the Albany, and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure, and never simple. Modern life would be very tedious if it were either, in modern literature, a complete impossibility.
That wouldn't be a bad thing at all.
Literary criticism is not your forte, my dear fellow. You best leave it to the people who haven't been at the university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you really are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in saying you're a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I know.
What on earth do you mean?
So you have invented a very useful younger brother named Ernest, so that you may be able to come up to town whenever you like. I have invented a perfectly invaluable permanent invalid called Bunbury, in order that I may be able to go to the country whenever I choose. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. For instance, if Bunbury, if it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinary bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at the Willis's tonight. But I've really been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine with me anywhere tonight.
I know. You're so absurdly callous about sending out invitations. Yet you annoys people so much as not receiving invitations.
You'd better much dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the sort. To begin with, I dined there on Monday, and one time a week is enough to dine with one's own relatives. In the second place, whenever I dine there, I'm always treated as a member of the family and either sit down with no woman at all, or two. In the third place, I know perfectly well who she'll seat me next to tonight. She'll sit next to Mary Farquhar, who always flirts with her own husband. And that sort of thing is not pleasant. Indeed, is not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the increase. The amount of women in London who flirt with their own husbands is perfectly scandalous. This looks bad. It's simply washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know you're a confirmed Bunburyist, I want to talk to you about Bunbury. I want to say the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolyn accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I'll kill him in any case. Cecily is a little too much interested in him. She's rather a bore. So I'm going to get rid of my brother Ernest, and I suggest you do the same with your invalid friend with the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to part with Bunbury, and if you get married, which seems to me extremely problematic, you will be very glad to know Bunbury. A man who marries without knowing Bunbury has a very tedious time of it.
That is nonsense. If I marry Gwendolyn, and she's the only woman in my life for which I'd ever marry, I will certainly wouldn't want to know Bunburyist.
Yes, and then your wife will. You don't seem to realize that in marriage, 3 is company, and 2 is enough.
That, my dear friend, is the corrupt theory that the French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
And the happy English home has proved in half the time.
For heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
My dear fellow, it isn't to be easy to be anything these days. There's so much beastly competition. Ah, that must be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives, or creditors, ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get her out of the way for 10 minutes so that you can have the chance of proposing to Gwendolyn, may I dine with the Willises tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, but you must be serious about it. I hate people who are not serious about meals. This is so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you're behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That is not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Dear me, Gwendolyn, aren't you smart?
I am always smart, aren't I, Mr. Worthing?
You're quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I'm not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry we were a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Horbury. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me.
Certainly, Aunt Augusta.
Won't you come sit here by me, Gwendolyn?
Good heavens, Lane! Where are the cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
I'm greatly distressed, Aunt Augusta, about there being no cucumbers, not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Horbury, who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
Yes, I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour, from what cause I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've quite a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She is such a nice woman and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid, Aunt Augusta, I shall give up the chance to dine with you tonight after all.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle would have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It's a great bore, and I need hardly say a terrible disappointment to me. But the fact is, I've just sent a telegram to say that my poor friend Bunbury is very ill again. They seem to think I should be with him.
It is very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, poor Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, that I think it is high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying with the question is absurd. Nor do I in any way approve of the modern sympathy with invalids. I consider it morbid. Illness of any kind is hardly a thing to be encouraged in others. Health is the primary duty of one's life. I'm always telling that to your uncle, but he never seemed to take much notice as far as improving his ailments go. I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season when everyone has practically said whatever they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I'll speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is still conscious, and I think I can promise you he'll be all right by Saturday. Of course, the music is a great difficulty. You see, if one plays good music, people don't listen. But if one plays bad music, people don't talk. But I'll run over the program with you, Algernon, if you would kind of step in the next room for a moment.
Thank you, Algernon. It's very thoughtful of you. I'm sure the program will be delightful after a few expurgations. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People always seem to think that they are improper and either look shocked, which is vulgar, or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a thoroughly respectable language, and indeed I believe is so. Gwendolyn, you will accompany me.
Certainly, Mamma.
Charming day it's been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else, and it makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a terrible way of coming back suddenly into a room that I've often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I've admired you more than any other girl I have ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite aware of the fact. And I often wish that, in public at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always held an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to marry someone of the name of Earnest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Earnest, I knew I was destined to love you.
Do you really love me?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy this has made me.
I am Earnest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Earnest.
Yes, I know it is, but supposing it was something else. Do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Oh, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the facts of life as we know them.
Personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care for the name Jack. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolyn, I must say that I think there are lots of other much nicer names. I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. No, there is very little music in the name of Jack. If any at all. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibration. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, were more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. And I pity any woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Earnest.
Gwendolyn, I must get christened at once. We must get married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you. You led me to believe that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing at all has been said about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think it would be an admirable opportunity. And to spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it's only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept.
Gwendolyn,
Yes, Mr. Worthing, what have you got to say to me?
you know what I have to say.
I know, but you don't say it.
Gwendolyn, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in proposing.
My own one. I have never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. All my girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. Quite blue. I hope you will always look just that way, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma! This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing has not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing.
Pardon me, you are not engaged to anyone. When you do become engaged to someone, I or your father, should as hell permit him, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come upon a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter that she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now, I have a few questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I make these inquiries, you, Gwendolyn, will wait for me below in the carriage.
But, Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolyn. Gwendolyn, the carriage.
Yes,
So Lady Bracknell returns and refutes the engagement. She interrogates Jack and finds him lacking in social status. On her way out, Lady Bracknell tells Jack that he must find some acceptable parents because he tells her that he has been found in a handbag in Victoria Station. And so he was adopted by a wealthy gentleman, and that wealthy gentleman, that's all the parentage that he has. So she does not like that. Gwendolyn returns for Jack's address in the country. Algernon overhears and writes the address on his shirt cuff. He's curious about Cecily and decides to go bunburying in the country. In the second act, the scene shifts to Jack Worthing's country estate, where Miss Prism, Cecily Cardew's governess, is teaching Cecily in the garden. Miss Prism sings Jack's praises as a sensible and responsible man, unlike his brother Ernest, who is wicked and has a weak character. She teaches Cecily that good people end happily, and bad people end unhappily, according to the romantic novel Miss Prism wrote when she was young. The local vicar, Canon Chasuble, arrives, and sensing an opportunity for romance, takes Miss Prism for a walk in the garden. While they are gone, Algy shows up, pretending to be Jack's wicked brother, Ernest.
Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has just driven over from the station. He brought his luggage with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4 the Albany, W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, miss. He seemed very much disappointed. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden. He said he was anxious to speak to you privately.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to the housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I have never met a really wicked man before. I feel rather frightened. I am so afraid he'll look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cecily, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe that I am more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cecily. And you, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
Oh, I'm not really wicked at all, cousin Cecily. You mustn't think that I'm wicked.
If you're not, then you have certainly been deceiving us in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be good, Pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
Oh, well, of course, I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
Oh, in fact, now that you mention it, I have been sort of bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It's much pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand why you're here at all. Uncle Jack will be back until Monday afternoon.
Oh, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go up by the first train on Monday morning. I have a business appointment that I'm anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you should better wait until Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak to you about his emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's gone out to buy an outfit.
I wouldn't let Jack buy my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think that you will require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Oh, well, the accounts I've received of Australia and the next world are not particularly encouraging. This world is good enough for me, Cousin Cecily.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
I'm afraid that I'm not. That is why you might make it your mission to reform me, if you don't mind, Cousin Cecily.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, would you mind my reforming myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I will. I feel better already.
You are looking a little worse.
That is because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Thank you. Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have an appetite unless I have a buttonhole.
A Marie-Chal meal?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, Cousin Cecily.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Miss Prism is a short-sighted old lady. You were the prettiest girl I ever saw.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
They're a snare that every sensible man would like to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I should like to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about.
So Algie is overcome by Cecily's beauty. Determined to learn more about Cecily while Jack is absent, Algernon plans to stay for the weekend, and then make a fast getaway before Jack arrives on Monday. However, Jack returns early in mourning clothes, claiming that his brother Ernest has died in Paris. He is shocked to find Algie there, posing as Ernest.
Oh, Uncle Jack, I am pleased to see you're back. But what horrid clothes you got on. Go and change them.
Cecily!
My child, my child.
What is the matter? Uncle Jack, do look happy. You look as if you had a toothache. And I have such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother, Earnest. He arrived half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out, and you will shake hands with him, won't you?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we had all been resigned to his loss, I find his sudden reappearance somewhat distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens.
Brother John, I've come down from town to tell you that I'm very sorry for the trouble I've given you, and I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you are not going to refuse your own brother's hand.
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think he's coming here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he has been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about Mr. Paul Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury. Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury anymore, about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
Of course, I do admit all the faults were on my own side, but I must say that Brother John's coldness to me is particularly painful. I expect a more enthusiastic welcome, especially considering it's the first time I've ever been here.
Uncle Jack, if you do not shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me.
Never, never, never.
This is the last time I shall ever do it.
It's pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cecily, you will join us.
Certainly. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today, my child.
Not so long feel premature about judgment.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Algy. You must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any Bunburying here.
I put Mr. Earnest's things in the room next to yours.
What?
Mr. Earnest's luggage, sir. I have unpacked it and put it in the room next to yours.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, and a rather large luncheon basket.
Well, I'm afraid I can't stay for more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog car at once. Mr. Earnest has been suddenly called back to town.
Yes, sir.
What a fearful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town at all.
Yes, you have.
I haven't heard anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered with my pleasure in the slightest manner.
I can quite understand that.
Well, Cecily is a darling.
You are not to talk of Miss Cardew like that. I do not like it.
I don't like your clothes. You're perfectly ridiculous in them. Why on earth don't you go up and change? It is perfectly ridiculous to be in deep mourning for someone who's actually staying as a guest in your house for a whole week. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying with me as a guest for a whole week, or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
Well, I certainly won't leave you as long as you're in mourning. If I were in mourning, I'm sure you would stay with me. I should think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, if you're not too long. I never saw someone take so long to get dressed and with such little result.
Well, at any rate, it is better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally a little overdressed, I make up for it by being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in this garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05 train, and I hope you will have a pleasant journey back to town. This Bunburying, as you call it, has not been a great success for you at all.
I think it's been a great success. I'm in love with Cecily, and that is everything.
So Cecily comes back. Algernon proposes to Cecily, who gets out a diary and letters that she's already written, explaining that she has already imagined their engagement. She has always wanted to marry someone named Earnest. So Algy, like Jack, needs to arrange a rechristening.
You'll never break off our engagement again, will you, Cecily?
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You mustn't laugh at me, Ernest. But it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. I pity any poor woman whose husband is not called Earnest.
My dear child, you mean to say that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, any name you like. Algernon, for instance.
But I don't like the name Algernon.
My own sweet, dear, loving, darling Cecily. I can't see why you'd reject the name of Algernon. It's not really a bad name at all. In fact, half of the chaps who get into the into the bankruptcy court we're called Algernon. But seriously, Cecily, if my name was Algie, couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character, but I fear that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cecily, your rector here, I suppose, is thoroughly experienced in all the practices and rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh yes, Dr. Chasuble is the most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can only imagine how much he knows.
Well, I must see you on a most important business. I shan't be away for more than half an hour.
Oh! Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and I've only just met you today for the first time, I think it is rather hard that you should leave me for such a long period of time as half an hour. Could not you maybe continue?
We'll be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax has just called to see Mr. Worthing on very important business, Miss Fairfax states.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
Mr. Worthing went over to the direction of the rectory some time ago.
Pray, ask the lady to come out here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon, and you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax, I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are associated with philanthropic work. I think it rather forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself. My name is Cecily Cardew.
Cecily Cardew. What a sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me at such a like me so much after we have known each other for such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cecily, may I not?
With pleasure,
And you always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
if you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this might be a favorable opportunity for my telling you who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of him, I suppose.
I don't suppose so.
Well, outside the family circle, Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home, to me, seems to be the proper sphere for men. And certainly, once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cecily, Mamma, whose views on education are quite strict, has raised me to be extremely short-sighted. Would you mind me looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I'm rather fond of being looked at.
You are here for a short visit, I suppose.
Oh no, I live here.
Indeed. Your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of his grandfather's, resides here also?
Oh no, I have no mother, nor in fact any relations.
Indeed.
My guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking over me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
His ward? Oh, it's strange that he never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. It becomes more interesting outwardly. But I'm not sure that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. Cecily, I have liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now that I know you're Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish you were, well, just a little older than you appear to be and not quite so alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly.
Pray do. I think whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be candid.
Well, to speak with perfect candor, Cecily, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong and upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honor. Disloyalty would be almost as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history, has supplied us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Willing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I'm sorry to say that they have not been on good terms for a long time.
That accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cecily, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship such as ours. Would it not? Of course, you are quite sure that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian.
Quite sure. In fact, I am going to be his.
I beg your pardon.
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make it a secret to you. Our little country newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cecily, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you must be under some strange misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious, for he asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read on the train.
It would distress me more than I can tell you, dear Gwendolyn, if it has caused you any mental or physical anguish. But I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he has clearly changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into any foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have gotten into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I'm glad to say I have never seen a spade. It is obvious that our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I lay the tea here as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in this vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, you can see 5 counties.
5 counties. I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden this is, Miss Cardew.
I'm glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country, if anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy are suffering very much from it at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl, but I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable these days.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand that to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar, and though I most distinctly asked for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature. But I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I will not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt that you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are always right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighborhood.
Ernest, my own Ernest.
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are to be engaged to this young woman?
To dear little Cecily? What could have put such an idea into your little head?
Thank you.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding. Miss Fairfax, the gentleman whose arm is present around your waist is my dear guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon.
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack. Oh.
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Mr. Ernest. May I ask you, are you engaged to be married to this woman?
What woman? Good heavens, Gwendolyn!
Yes, to good heaven, Gwendolyn. I mean,
Of course not. What could have put such an idea into your head?
you may.
I felt there was some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is now embracing me is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh, are you called Algernon?
I cannot deny it.
Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. It's been John for years.
A gross deception has been practiced on the both of us.
My poor wounded Cecily.
My sweet, wronged Gwendolyn.
You will call me sister, will you?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest. So it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolyn, Cecily, it is very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life that I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I'm really quite inexperienced in doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you quite frankly, I have no brother Ernest. I have not had a brother at all. I've never had a brother in my life, and I certainly will not ever have I certainly have not the smallest intentions of ever having a brother in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cecily, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anyone.
It is not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly venture to come after us there.
No, men are so cowardly, are they not?
Later, the two men follow them, explaining that they're going to be rechristened Earnest, and the women relent and agree to stay engaged. But Lady Bracknell, following her daughter, shows up demanding an explanation for the couple's plan. When she discovers the extent of Cecily's fortune, she gives her consent to her engagement to Algernon. However, Jack's parentage is still a stumbling block to her blessings. Jack tells Lady Bracknell that he will not agree to Cecily's engagement until she is of age, which is 35. Unless he can marry Gwendolyn. So.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
The christenings, sir, is not that somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen expressed interest for immediate baptism.
At their age, the idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not hear of such excesses. Lord Bracknell will be highly displeased if he learned that that was the way in which you wasted your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there have been no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think that, as things are now, would be of much practical value to either of us.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savor of the heretical views of the Anabaptists. Views that I completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one particularly secular, I will return to church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the last hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for a moment. This matter may prove to be one of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is of the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same person. May I ask what position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is not.
I was told you expect me in the vestry, dear Canon. I have been waiting for you there for the last hour and 3/4.
Prism! Prism! Where is the baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator that contained a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality, but the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
I do not know Lady Bracknell, and I only wish I did. The pure facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day you mention, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had with me a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction I had written in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and placed the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance. I insist upon knowing where you deposited the handbag containing the infant.
It was placed in one of the cloak stations of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria. The Brighton line.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolyn, wait here for me.
If you wait not too long, I will wait for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly tell you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered a thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. It sounds as if he was having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It stopped now.
I wish he would arrive at some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
be mine. Yes, here is the injury it received from the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus that occurred in younger and happier days. Here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage that occurred in Leamington. And here on the lock are my initials. I had forgotten that I had them placed there in an extravagant mood. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I am delighted to have it so unexpectedly restored to me. It's been a great inconvenience being without it all these years.
Mr. Prism, more was restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes. Mother.
Mr. Earnest, I am unmarried.
Unmarried. I cannot deny this is a serious blow. But after all, who has the right to cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
There is some error. There is the woman who can tell you who you really are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me who I am?
I'm afraid that the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? I have had a brother all the time. I knew I had a brother. I always said I had a brother. Cecily, how could you have ever doubted that I had a brother? Dr. Trumbull, my elder brother. My unfortunate brother. Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother. Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother. Algy, you young scoundrel. You will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like an elder brother in all your life.
Well, not till today, old boy, I admit, though I did my best, however, though I was out of practice.
My own. But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become someone else?
Good heavens, I'd quite forgotten that point. Your decision on the subject is irrevocable, I suppose?
I never change except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Then the question had better be cleared up at once. Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time when Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, had been lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
Then the question, then I was christened. That was settled. Now, what name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Well, being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I cannot at present moment recall what the general's Christian name was, but I have no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years, and that was the result of the Indian climate and marriage and indigestion and other things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect our father's Christian name?
My dear fellow, we were never on speaking terms. He died when I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of the period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life, but I have no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army list for the past 40 years, I hear. These delightful records should have been my constant study. M. Generals. Malham. Maxby. Magley. What ghastly names these are. Markby. Migsby. Mobbs. Moncrief. Lieutenant. 1840. Captain. Lieutenant Colonel. Colonel. General. 1869. Christian names. Earnest John. I've always told you, Gwendolyn, my name was Earnest, didn't I? Well, it is Earnest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
Yes, I remember that the general was called Earnest. I knew I had some particular reason for disliking that name.
Ernest. My own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you ever forgive me?
I can, for I feel that you are sure to change.
My own one. Letitia!
Frederick, at last!
Cecily, my own one. At last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I have realized now for the first time the vital importance of being earnest.
But feel free